Today, the dream is dead. Ben Carson has announced that his run for the presidency, the nomination for the GOP, is done, and he's moving on to something perhaps more suited to his talents. We'll give you the details on that. Here is the statement that he released. He's speaking today at CPAC. He said, "I'm leaving the campaign trail. I will still continue to be heavily involved in trying to save our nation. We have to save it." He said, "There are a lot of people who love me. They just won't vote for me."
Oh, come on.
I did which is somewhat true, but that's sad. I did the math. I looked at the states. I looked at the delegate counts. I simply realized that it wasn't going to happen. And if that was the case, I didn't want to interfere with the process. Which, overall, considering the source, that's very sober, true, accurate statements. Most people would stay in just to get more book sales or something like that.
Except the statement that they love me, they just won't vote for me. That's I've heard a lot of stuff. That's the ultimate. It's no, it's not you, it's me. Really? Did they add that too, Ben? Did they say we love you, can't vote for you? It's not you, Ben. It's us.
Yeah.
I like how in this graphic my head is exactly where Carson's is.
Now he's Chris Christie.
Okay. I'm going to try to stay in it the whole time. All right, anyway. This is what I'd like to say about this. I think it's about time. And when I found out I wasn't going to win, I got so mad that I nearly smashed my mom with a hammer. Okay, so look, dude, if they don't vote for you, there's apparently a limit on how much they love you.
Yeah.
I'm just keeping it real, okay?
Maybe some of them more pragmatic. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it now seems immensely clear what it was that he was doing throughout this week. He knew that he was going to drop out after last week's races, but he wanted to get a bunch of press for his dropping out, so he wanted to do it at CPAC. And so he had to do as well, there's no path forward. I have nothing else to say. I'm not going to go to the debate, but I have nothing else to say. When it was abundantly clear that he was going to drop out.
Yeah, but as usual with everything that Carson does, it was bungled. And so the idea was, I'll get 2 press cycles out of this. Now, why does he care about press cycles? He's dropping out anyway. What difference? No, for book sales, okay? So every bit of publicity he gets, he sells more books, he believes. And where is he going to make the major announcement? At CPAC. What else is he doing at CPAC?
Selling books.
Selling books, okay? So that the whole point of this was for Ben Carson to make more money, both through book sales and then speeches, etc. Now, if you go too far, though, you'll start to aggravate Republicans who kind of like you, right? Like you, but aren't going to vote for you. And by the way, how great is that? The one black candidate says, "Oh, the Republicans tell me they like me, but they're not going to vote for me." Really? I wonder if they actually do like you. Anyway, but he bungled it because he was like, "Oh, I'm kind of dropping out, but not exactly." And then you're like, okay, well, that's not a big announcement. I'm not going to cover it that much. We chose not to cover it because it was kind of schwang, wang, wang. Yeah. Same with a lot of other media outlets. And now when you actually do drop out, it's like, yeah, dude, we kind of already knew that. So you don't get the pop of any one moment where like, oh, okay, there it is. Carson finally dropping out. And it's like you stabbed yourself in the belt with a knife.
Yeah.
But anyway, overall, his whole mission was let me make more money. And overall, you got to say, mission accomplished. He was very briefly #1 in the polls. Mm-hmm. The only guy who was #1 outside of Donald Trump. And so I'm sure he sold a lot of books. His wife came out with a book in the middle of this campaign with even crazier stories than that were in his book. So they sold books, and they'll get plenty of good money for speeches going forward.
It's co-written by an archangel, actually.
I know, right? Who will say, "Oh yeah, but Dr. Ben Carson, you pay him $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a speech because we really like him, even though we certainly wouldn't vote for him, right?" That's the whole point of his campaign, so they could have a black guy, and they say, "Oh, we like the black guy. I mean, we're not going to vote for him. No way, no way. Yeah. But we like him."
Who else gets live national coverage of a book signing?
That's true.
I saw him get that. He got live national coverage of a book signing, and they were talking about what a phenomenon he was on MSNBC.
And at that point, he could have just pulled a Costanza, dropped the mic, be like, "Mission accomplished. Go out on top."
Yes, yeah.
From my point of view, I am glad that he had at least the level of the support that he did, because while many of the things that he believes about politics are absolutely absurd, many of his beliefs about religion are absurd. His beliefs about history based on religion are absurd. He did still represent the conservative Christian version of John Kasich. That we've had lots of conservative religious Republicans before, and they tend to be of the sort of Ted Cruz, where my Christianity is a blade and I'm going to cut your head off with it. But Carson wasn't really that. Carson was more of the compassionate conservative. My Christianity says that I'm supposed to help people out when I'm not stabbing them in their belt buckle. And look, in Alaska, he got 10% of the vote, which says that there are Republicans out there who want someone who shares their values, and those values don't just mean that homosexuality is wrong, that there is something a little bit warmer and more caring about it.
I think you are way, way too generous to him.
Maybe.
Yeah. So,
very
and
much.
I'll tell you why. He seemed more compassionate just because he muttered,
Yeah.
right? And he was quieter.
Yes.
More
To be fair, I
soft-spoken.
slept through most of what he would say, but I assume it was good stuff.
But he said he would that a Muslim should never be president. He was as discriminatory as Cruz and almost Trump against Muslims. You know,
wanted to take
like I said,
healthcare
many
away
of his
from-
beliefs are crazy.
He
But
wanted to take health care away from poor people. He was against Obamacare and said
and
it was
still
the worst thing
far
since-
more compassionate than the
Didn't he,
remaining
say,
candidates.
didn't he say it was the
He
worst thing
was-
since slavery?
oh, that's right. He said Obamacare was the worst thing. No, he said Obamacare was worse than slavery.
Worse than slavery.
Okay, so no, the guy was a full-blown lunatic. I mean, we broke this story. To be honest with you guys, as we always are, nobody else picked it up. Okay, but it was an amazing story. According to Seventh-day Adventists, and we had him on tape talking about this, there's a revelation, and that's what he is. He's a fundamentalist Seventh-day Adventist. That there will be two great beasts will rise and lead to Armageddon. The two great beasts are the Catholic Church and the United States of America. So this guy who's like a lunatic and believes that the U.S. is going to destroy the world was trying to become the president of the U.S. Like the mainstream media, he's a Republican, and they were so scared and they didn't want to touch him and stuff. And religion, oh my God, I'm so scared to talk about anybody's religion. Unless they're grilling Bernie Sanders about whether he's actually religious or not, right? But if you believe that the U.S. is going to end the world and you're trying to get control of the U.S. government, no, let's not ask him any questions about that, right?
Well, if the U.S. is the worst thing in the world,
Yeah.
keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer.
So yes, Cruz's blade might have been sharper. And there was a lot of things that were dull about Ben Carson, including his blade. But there's a chance that Ben Carson was a bigger religious lunatic than even Ted Cruz.
Yeah, maybe. Like I said,
we're-
many of his political and religious beliefs were crazy, but the way he would speak about it was at least more.
The question though is where do his supporters go, right? So so they say that his Twitter followers are most likely to follow Donald Trump. So I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
You would think his would go to John Kasich maybe, but then John Kasich gave poor people health care, and that they hate that shit. So
I think it'll probably be a mix of Cruz and Trump. Maybe a little bit of Kasich for the sort of peace-bringing aspect of like, why does there have to be so much like yelling back and forth? Maybe they'll find that appealing.
Well, so importantly, he did not endorse anyone today. I mean, of course, tomorrow he'll be behind Donald Trump in a press conference, kind of like he is with me right now. Okay, and he'll stand there like Chris Christie and be like the whole time, right? But it's logical to think that a lot of his voters who are religious will go to the more evangelical strand, which is Ted Cruz. It's also logical that a lot of his voters are like the outsider idea, which would then go to Donald Trump. You wouldn't think that Marco Rubio would pick up much of his voters because he's more, quote unquote, mainstream, more establishment, not the things that Ben Carson voters said they wanted. The flip side to that is, in my years of covering politics, things never quite work out the way you think they're going to work out. And it's partly because voters don't know what they're doing, right? Especially on the Republican side, right? So, like, the guys who are voting for Ben Carson, who knows what's in their crazy heads, right?
Right.
And they might be like,
They've been supporting him this whole time.
Yeah,
It
and
takes a special sort of person, I think.
yeah, and then they say, okay, I'm going for Christie. I don't know. Like, who knows? Somebody else who's out there. They're like, well, he was already sleeping during the race. I might as well go for someone else who's out of the race at this point. Anyway, so it's very hard to determine. And at this point, his supporters were so few, generally around 5% in most of the races, that it really doesn't matter much. If it gets split up 2% here, 2% here, and 1.5% over there, not going to make much of a difference.
Well, I mean, look, Trump's up like 5 points over Kasich in the most recent polls in Ohio. I mean, if those go to Kasich or they go to Trump, that's potentially enough to swing a big winner-take-all state. I mean, we won't know necessarily, and I'm sure there's been polling done showing second choice. We're gonna have to look into those.
And well, Ben Carson is now. He said he wanted to spend more time napping with his family.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we do actually know what he's gonna do now. He's become the national chairman of My Faith Votes, and he put out a statement saying, "Nothing is more important to me than my personal faith, and it is my faith that motivated me to be involved in the political process to begin with. I believe Christians in this country can easily determine the next president of the United States and all other national and local leaders.
think?
Every leader,
You
all
think?
leaders, should they simply show up at the polls." And the group is designed, it's saying, you know, the person who wins the presidency tends to be like 5 million votes over the other person, but there's 25 million Christians who don't vote. So if they just vote, then Christianity gets to determine what every leader of America is, which makes sense since we don't have a wall between politics and religion.
So, like, what does that mean then? Christians get to decide who wins. So we could shut those no good Jews, Muslims, and atheists up?
That's the subtext.
And Buddhists and Hindus? Like, what does that mean? Like, I mean, people never talk about, like, the discriminatory side of that equation, right?
It's a supremacy
By
argument.
the way, and Christians aren't a monolith, though. That's the problem.
Of course,
There's
yeah.
plenty of liberal, there's plenty of progressive Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
Barack
imagine
Obama
if,
pretends to be a
Yeah,
Christian.
Barack Obama pretends all the time that he's Christian. Yeah.
imagine if in a Muslim country, one of their leaders was like, if enough Muslims show up to vote, then the Muslims will rule over all the other religions. People are like, oh, God damn it, the Sharia law, we knew it.
Sharia
we
law.
knew it, right?
Sharia law.
Right.
Well, and we remember people were really pissed off when, I think it was Netanyahu before the election there said in a rally, there are a lot of Muslims who are going to go and vote. That's why you have to turn out to offset them.
Yes, that is
People got really pissed because you're not supposed to use those sorts of terms or that sort of divisive language about religion.
Yeah, but
we
how-
don't want it in America.
But how big is Netanyahu's dick? That's my question.
I don't know, man.
So
Their debates aren't as informative as ours.